Hello, friends. My name is Anderson Marchak,
And I'm Ricardo Segura.
and this is the Panel Bros. Welcome to the panel.
Whoo! Discussions are we gonna have this week?
So, a couple things happened this week.
Quite a bit. People don't even realize that when we were filming the last panel, news
Yes.
was breaking while we were filming, and it was like this is heavy stuff that just dropped right now while we're in the
Yeah.
middle of filming.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, I wanted to let everybody know we're getting into a groove now as far as this podcast goes. And for right now, the hot news is the DCEU, Warner Brothers Discovery, all that good stuff. So that's going to be a bulk of our discussions for right now. But I promise you, we have movie discussions coming. We have movie reviews. We want to do trailer reactions. All that good stuff is coming your way. But for right now, there's a lot going on in the DCU. They dropped the E, I
Yeah,
think, the
they
DCU
got the
right now.
E out. They got
Yeah.
the E.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So let's start off with a little screen share here and we can just jump off of that. How's that sound, Ricardo?
That sounds good to me.
All right then. So all right. So this is somebody posting, responding to James Gunn. So what prompted this right here was apparently they passed on Wonder Woman 3.
Yes.
And that in itself was a controversy, obviously.
Yeah.
You know, Patty, um, she the director of Wonder Woman and Wonder Woman 84, she presented everything to them and they passed. And there was, there's some controversy as far as, does that mean Gal's gone? Does that mean there's more plans for her later on? We don't know. And this person here posted something and he said, "Cannot wait to see what you're cooking up." Speaking to James Gunn. That being said, the move to boot Cavill and Gadot, especially after they'd announced their return, doesn't inspire confidence. And he said, "I'm not sure where you're getting that we booted Gal." So that was with Gal. And to go along with the Superman uh, reference there, Peter and I have a DC slate ready to go, which we couldn't be more over the moon about. We'll be able to share some exciting information about our first projects at the beginning of the year. Among those on the slate is Superman. In the initial stages, our story will be focusing on an earlier part of Superman's life, so the character will not be played by Henry Cavill. But we just had a great meeting with Henry, and we're big fans, and we talked about a number of exciting possibilities to work together in the future. Okay, so let's come back here. I kind of showed my cards early with Wonder Woman, but they kind of happened at the same time, those tweets. So, well, before we got to Cavill, what are your feelings as far as when you first saw that news that they didn't pick up Wonder Woman 3? Where was your mind at as far as that goes?
Well, when the news first broke out, I was kind of sad because I didn't know what it really meant because initially it was saying that Wonder Woman 3 was scrapped. Now, when you hear something like that, it almost makes it seem like there is no Wonder Woman 3 coming in sight. So I got very nervous because I know that Gal was and Patty were probably both very, very invested in wanting to do a trilogy. So when I saw the news of it getting scrapped, I was like, what's the deal? Like, you wait, what? And then obviously more
Right.
news started coming out, and it was along the lines of like, well, their script didn't fit our vision moving forward. So I was like, oh, okay, so maybe there's a possibility at sending in a new treatment, something that'll fit along the lines. And then we started getting more information coming out saying, well, it Patty wasn't interested, and then
Mm-hmm.
other reports were saying, well, she wasn't even offered. So now we're getting a lot of, obviously in this busy, you're going to get a lot of conflicting reports.
Right.
But initially, for me, I was heartbroken. It's no secret that I think the very first Wonder Woman is fantastic. I
Oh
absolutely
yeah.
adore that movie. I think Wonder Woman 84 has good moments, but I think overall it didn't hit the mark for me personally.
Right.
So I was very excited to see what Patty was going to do with that criticism from Wonder Woman 84 and apply that to the third film. And then when it got taken away, like I started to get really, really nervous because I think that
Right.
was the very first thing that started the chatter online of like, oh, like maybe there's a big reboot coming. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So when I saw it, I was a bit optimistic, to be honest with you. I'm always going to look at it from the bright side before we start
Mhm.
doom and gloom. I said, okay, well, they passed on it. More than likely, that means Patty Jenkins is out, unfortunately.
Mhm.
But that doesn't mean Gal's gone. That doesn't mean that that Wonder Woman is done. I was thinking, well, one of two things: either they're just not going to do Wonder Woman 3 and focus on her cameoing in other movies, maybe another team up movie down the line. We're not losing Gal. You know,
Yeah.
she looks amazing in the role, you know, and she's done a great job in the role so far. And then when he shared this news, well, we'll get to that in a second. But you know, I just no, there's no way they're not going to go to Gal. You know, none
Mhm.
of the Trinity. We're going to call them that, the Trinity:
Yeah.
Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. Um, and I just said, no, that's not going to happen. And I said, if you know, this was before the reboot talk even started. You know, it's like, you know, it's fine. It's not going to happen. We're looking at, you know, just it's just the Wonder Woman 3 is just not happening. You know, let's not, you know, jump to any conclusions. And then, you know, Gunn goes and drops that tweet that I just shared about the plans that he has
Mhm.
moving forward. And he dropped that information while we were talking last week.
It knocked the air out of me, man. It just
Right.
absolutely knocked the air out of me.
Yeah, he dropped that information that that Superman will not be a part of things. And I'm gonna come back and share that again here. Yeah, there it is. So just that second part there. And the
Yeah.
among those on the slate of Superman in the initial stages, our story will be focusing on an earlier part of Superman's life. So the character will not be played by Henry Cavill, you know, and you know, he goes on to say they had a meeting with Henry and um possibilities in the future, you know. Okay, that's good and all, but it means the guy that's been playing Superman and has defined Superman for the past 9 years in many people's eyes is gone now. I I was not happy
No.
when I heard that news, and it we were right in the middle of you know, taking care of things on here. So kudos to you, my friend. We came back on time, and you had to like put on a brave face
Yeah.
for that.
It was like I can't come back to this panel and just look mopey and miserable. It's like, no, tuck it away,
Right.
wait till we're done, and then just let it out.
Yeah, yeah, and to the point we want you were saying, oh well, we got to come back and talk again, and I was
Yes.
ready to, and then I said, hey, are you sure? It might not be, you know, it
Yeah,
might be a
that's
little too emotional.
it would have been, and I'm glad we waited because now I'm much more calm now. I'm not
Right,
going to say that I'm all like, yeah, and I'm all for it, but
right,
I, I'm more calm about how I feel about things.
yeah, exactly. So, oh man, what a journey it's been with Henry Cavill. So we had Man of Steel, and
Hmm.
you know, which we both enjoyed, and then Batman v Superman, we both enjoyed that, and then the 2017 theatrical, you know, Justice League, which obviously we're not going to go into that, but you
Hmm.
know, we saw that, and that was in 2017, and then then things got a little weird after that.
Very weird.
we had a
Very
we
weird.
had a headless Superman in Shazam,
Hmm.
and after that, the Snyder cut of Justice League
Yes.
gets announced, and then we see Henry Cavill again in Zack Snyder's Justice League in 2021, and it
Hmm.
said, oh, okay, well, ooh, this is enjoyable. We really enjoyed
Yes.
that, obviously,
Yes.
and by the way. I think we're gonna do a discussion one day about us talking about that movie,
Just that in
that
itself.
beautiful
Yeah.
4 hour movie
Yeah.
we've talked hours and hours about.
Yep.
Uh, you know, so it it was pretty cool seeing that and seeing that version of Superman come back again, because obviously
Mhm.
the version that we saw in the 2017 version of Justice League, that wasn't, you know, what Zach had established.
No.
So, you know, we finally got to see, you know, Henry in the Snyder cut, and then we had a silhouette version of Superman in the Peacemaker show.
Ah.
I'm not going to get
Uh,
into that.
yeah,
Just we're just dropping little nuggets here
yeah,
and there.
yeah.
And it was a situation of, well, okay, so we saw him in the 2021, Zack Snyder's Justice League, but technically speaking, he filmed that years ago. We just only now
Yeah,
saw him again,
yeah.
so he hadn't done any new material since whenever they filmed 2016,
Hmm.
2017, around that time. So the public starts asking, are we going to get Amanda Steel 2? When are we going to see Henry Cavill back as Superman? Rumors aside, Dwayne The Rock Johnson, he rallies, and the cameo of Henry Cavill as Superman, he shows up. Sorry, no, I forgot to give a spoiler alert, but oh well.
At this point, Black Adam has been out long,
Yeah,
long.
yeah. Yeah,
Everybody know.
I guess I'll start telling everybody these are spoiler discussions.
Yeah.
But but in any case, at the end of Black Adam, which I thought it was okay. Didn't
Hmm.
didn't love it, didn't hate it. I thought it was okay. But the talking point of that movie, one of the talking points was Henry Cavill as Superman shows up at the very end, and then
Yes.
he goes online and he says, "I am back as Superman," et cetera, et cetera. And then not even a couple months later, we get this news.
Yeah, it's talk about a bombshell. Like I feel so
Right,
bad for Henry because I feel like Henry's Superman was always surrounded by some form of controversy.
right.
Going back to Man of Steel when Man of Steel came out, I adore Man of Steel. I think it's a fantastic movie. Superman is my favorite superhero of all time, and I connected with that movie in a different way.
Right.
So I recall, the critics not really being on board with that Superman. So he had to kind of overcome that. And then same thing with Batman v Superman. A lot of people weren't really convinced this was the right approach for Superman. And then you had the theatrical release of Justice League, which was a Frankenstein monster all in itself. And he's a CGI mess, and it just
Right.
kind of took you
Right.
out of it. And then, like you mentioned, the headless and the silhouette. So he's always been surrounded by some form of controversy, and I felt awful because the moment it felt like things started to get on track, which is his appearance in Black Adam, I was
Yeah.
like, oh man, like we've got him back. Henry's back on board. And we've discussed this. I've never been against the idea of a small reboot that would include Henry Cavill.
Right.
I was about that. They say, hey, how would you feel if we follow and we go in maybe a different direction, a new director, new writers, but Henry Cavill is still our Man of Steel. And I'm all for that. So for us to get so close and then for him to be told by the studio, according to what he left on his Instagram, is that the studio told him, say, hey, let everyone know that you're back, starting in October. So I was like, oh man, it looks like they had a verbal agreement. But you and I both know that things change all the time, especially in Hollywood and
Right.
film. Things can change at the drop of a dime, just like that, especially with a verbal agreement. And we know that James coming in is going to want to develop his own universe, his own flavor. And I was just really, really, no pun intended, I was really hopeful that Henry was going to continue. So it was a huge, huge bombshell to know that James's version of his Superman moving forward. He wanted to go younger, not an origin story, but he wanted to talk about the early years of Superman working at the Daily Planet, and Henry just didn't fit that. So it was crushing, man. Like it hurt a lot because I thought we were finally there.
Right.
That after all the years of him having to earn that role, because even movie after movie after movie, I felt like he was still earning it in many people's eyes. And The Rock fighting as hard as he did, and I got to give Rock all the praise because he
Absolutely.
fought really, really hard, and he was very open about how hard he fought, and he was told no, and he wasn't going to take no for an answer. He felt Superman was sitting on the sidelines for way too long. It's no secret that they have the same management team, and Rock's like, hey man, we're going to get you, and we were there. So it just knocked the air out of me. You know what I
Right.
mean? And it's going to take a long time for me to get over it. But we have to see, and again, just hope it was the right decision in the eyes of many fans around the world.
Yeah, absolutely. It was definitely heartbreaking because let's just put it out there. After the release the Snyder Cut movement, which led to releasing, Zack Snyder's Justice League, people started rallying for the restore the Snyderverse.
Yes.
And that means a lot of different things to a lot of different
Hmm.
people. But for most people, it means Justice League 2 and Justice League 3.
Yes.
There's other movies we can talk about that would go in there. People talk about Ben Affleck's The Batman movie that he wrote with Chris Terrio. That's my wish list movie that I would love to see one day. That will, we have no idea if that's ever going to get made. There's a script.
Hmm.
That's all we know.
Yes.
And Man of Steel 2. Some people talk about that movie. Lately, it's been Wonder Woman 3, but it's mostly been Ben Affleck's The Batman, Man of Steel 2, Justice League 2, Justice League 3, mainly Justice League 2 and Justice League 3. And I discussed this with you. I said, regardless if the Snyderverse gets restored or not, we already got what we wanted.
Yes.
We got Zack Snyder's Justice League. To be honest with you, I I said, you know what? They have no reason to go back to the Snyderverse because they're already moving forward with all these
Yeah.
other plans. And I said to myself, if we don't get the Snyderverse back, that's fine. We got Zack Snyder's Justice League. At the time, I said, I'm okay with a soft reboot as long as we keep the actors.
Yes.
As long as we see Gal Gadot back as Wonder Woman, Henry Cavill back as Superman, Ben Affleck back as Batman. And there's things about other actors, that may or may not have had them come back again. Ezra Miller as the Flash. We knew Ray Fisher and his issues with the company as Cyborg. We may not have seen him again. Aquaman, Jason Momoa, may or may not see him again, but at least bring back the Trinity.
Yeah.
At least bring back the Trinity. So this movie comes out, and it's obviously it's sad to see James Gunn left the door open.
Hmm.
And Henry, I didn't take the screenshot, but Henry mentioned that he said that he did the announcement because the studio told him to do that,
Hmm.
and people can speculate whether they knew that they weren't moving forward with him or not. I think that makes you look really bad if you did that to your actor.
I will say
Yeah,
this. James Gunn, I read this tweet. Someone had asked him, "How long have you been working on the script for your Superman story?"
right.
And his response was a few months. So, and again, I'm only speculating, but that leads me to believe that he may had already known that he was going to go with a younger Superman. But
Right.
obviously, you don't want to make those type of negative waves on your first day on the job. So maybe they wanted to soften the blow. It's like, hey, just tell everyone you're back, man. Just keep everyone on this beautiful high that they're on. The internet exploded. Henry's back. Before that, before the movie had been seen by tons of people, I couldn't tell you how hard it was to evade that footage online. Henry
Oh
Superman
yeah.
returning was everywhere. Everyone had
Right.
to be extremely careful. So everyone knew about it. And I think that they were trying to keep that just level of excitement up, and they didn't want to say, hey, you just saw that cameo, but he's never coming back. And I don't want to believe that they knew, but again, just with his wording and saying he's been working on the script for a couple months, it leads me to believe that he kind of already knew
Right.
and just didn't want to make waves. But again, I'm speculating.
Oh yeah, there's no way. Well, see, my thing business wise, it just doesn't make sense. To me, it just sounds like he didn't tell them
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
like why would they do that knowing that it was going to happen eventually? Like I to go along with you, I feel like he just knew, but he didn't let
Hmm.
the studio know.
Yeah.
And because there's no way the studio like, and this is under Zaslav now. They're trying to
Yes.
correct the mistakes of the old regime. It's Warner Brothers Discovery now. I just don't see them knowing that they weren't going to have him tell him to do that.
Yeah.
It was like kind of a surprise to everybody, and I don't think we're sitting here having this discussion if Black Adam is a worldwide huge blockbuster success.
Very, very true. Very true. And there was a lot of reports on that online about how, it didn't make back its money, and then you had
Right.
other reports going, no, it did. So again, conflicting reports. I think even
Right.
Rock tweeted the numbers out saying, no, we've actually done really well. But to the studio, maybe in their eyes, are like, it didn't really hit the way we wanted to,
Not big enough. Yeah.
and that could have had an effect on things. And again, James is surprising me a lot because I know when again, this is only speculation as well, but I remember the rumor that they had offered James Gunn a Superman film.
Hmm.
And I think he opened up about it and said that it didn't interest him because he didn't feel that that type of character
Right.
goes along with his writing style, his filmmaking style. So he chose to do the Suicide Squad, which many would say that's James Gunn's wheelhouse, taking the
Oh yeah.
misfits, a group of people, very Guardians of the Galaxy, dark humor. That's James. So for him to say, you know what? Our top priority moving forward is going to be Superman. That made me very excited, but I was shocked to hear that James Gunn, who had previously said, he wouldn't really touch characters like Superman or Batman. I was shocked to hear him say he was going to be penning the script. That
Right.
surprised me.
Right. That was a surprise. Absolutely. Absolutely. So we're going to come back to this. I wanted to, because it's going to lead into our discussion about where they go from here, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So let's so this is a response to somebody saying, could Ben Affleck direct? He said, met with Ben yesterday precisely because he wants to direct and we want him to direct. We just have to find the right project. What does that mean?
I'm gonna be very, very honest with you. Considering the news that we've heard over the past week, I thought that that would be the type of thing to drive Ben away. Be like, you know what? I'm done. I'm
Right.
done. Everything that happened on the theatrical release of Justice League and everything that Ben went through, and then Ben having to announce he was no longer Batman, because Matt Reeves had come in and wanted a much younger Batman, and now Ben is coming back and he's filming these cameos, but now these cameos might not even make the final cut. I was like, okay, he's done. He's gonna walk away. Like that's it. So for him to still have an interest in being a part of this universe and directing, it it gets me a little excited because I'm like, oh man, there's a part of me, man, I'm shooting a half court shot here. Like the idea of Ben Affleck directing, and it's like, oh man, what if he gets to direct his Batman film? You know
Right.
what I mean? Like, what if he gets to do that? Because I don't know. And then obviously the conversation of Superman. Now, you might have to correct me on this, but I thought I heard years and years ago that Ben's name was once attached to direct Man of Steel, that
It was.
he hadn't signed, but they had asked him.
Yeah.
And then I think after he gave the initial no, I think that's when Nolan approached Zack Snyder. Again, I could be completely wrong.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, now James is writing a Superman script. I'm like, man, like if you, in my opinion, if you want to try to get some of those fans who are hurt and heartbroken, Ben Affleck directing the Superman film,
Right.
I think would get a lot of people go, oh,
Hmm.
okay. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, that's definitely a thought. I Okay, so this got me upset because I'm a Batman fan.
Yep.
And I've just really enjoyed, Ben Affleck's version of Batman.
Mhm.
And I always told this to you, we haven't seen enough. We've seen
No.
a decent amount, but not enough. What a debut in Batman v Superman. Whether you like that movie or not, it's hard to argue his portrayal of Batman and how, gritty it was and how at the time true to the comics it was,
Hmm.
and that warehouse scene is probably the best I've ever seen live action Batman
Yep.
ever. That still holds true today. No disrespect to Matt Reeves's, the Batman,
Hmm.
but that little sequence, and then we saw him. He has a cameo in Suicide Squad. He was in, uh, you know, both versions of Justice League, and I think that's it.
Yeah, so you have, yep, Batman v Superman. You have the Justice League theatrical and the Snyder cut that we've seen.
Hmm.
And in Suicide Squad. Yeah, I think that's the only time we've seen him. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. That's the only time we've
Yeah.
seen him. So,
Yeah.
and there was a progression, and
Yes.
that's what Zach was doing. It was a progression. The person we saw in Man of Steel is not the same person we see by the end of Zack Snyder's Justice League, Henry Cavill Superman, and then
Absolutely.
the person we see in BVS is not the same person by the end of Zack Snyder's Justice League, Ben Affleck Batman. There's a progression. And by then I said, oh man, I want to see what this Batman does now. I want to
Yes.
see this Batman with the League, or I want to see this Batman with more with his rogues gallery or
Hmm.
something. He had like a little tiny interaction in Suicide Squad with
Hmm.
Harley and with Joker, and then we came back to that again with the post credit scene with Jared Leto, a different version of Jared Leto's Joker in Zack Snyder's Justice League, and I was just like thinking to myself, oh man, I would love to see him with his rogues gallery, man. Like how cool would that
Yes.
be? And so now we're here now where it's okay. On the same day you tell us no more Henry Cavill, you leave us a breadcrumb that you may want Ben Affleck to direct, and
Hmm.
it's that leaves very little room for him to continue playing Batman.
Yes.
As far as that goes, because I don't want to go into the whole story. It's the reason why the Batman movie for Matt Reeves happened, because he wrote it with Chris Terrio and he wanted to direct it, but being in it, it was just too much to everything all happen at once. And then they
Yeah.
wanted Matt Reeves to direct it, and then that led to Matt Reeves doing his own thing.
Hmm.
So it's it's disappointing as far as that goes. But now we're looking at, okay, well, does this mean that Henry and Ben are gone now?
Yeah.
I mean, there's obviously Ben Affleck's got a huge part in the Flash movie. We already know about that.
Hmm.
There was there's rumors of him having a cameo at the end of Aquaman 2, and at the time we felt, oh, that means he's back now.
Yeah.
You know, that means he's back. So, I if he's gone, to kind of agree with what you said, see him directing Superman movie would be great,
Hmm.
obviously, because that fits the plan of what they want to do. But man, if we bring back the Batman script and he directs his own movie, but then he gets to cast it and everything like that,
Hmm.
not be in it, but bring back that script that he wrote with Terrio. Oh
It it
man,
it, it would be unbelievable because I know that there was the rumor and report that James was looking and considering bringing Matt Reeves Batman to his DCU.
right?
I for me personally,
No,
I
that's not
immediately
going to
thought that
happen.
was a no. I was like, no. I
No,
was like, no, Matt. From what we've read and what we've seen, and again, we're basically all we can do is speculate. But I was like, I don't think Matt would be on board for that. But then James came out and said, no, that's 100% untrue. So if that Reeves universe gets to exist in its own plane, we still need a Batman. So I'm like, oh, the idea of Ben Affleck getting to direct his original script, maybe some tweaks here and there to fit into the DCU going forward. Potentially Batman getting to make the movie, Ben Affleck, I should say, getting to make the Batman movie he always wanted to make. That would be great to see. Obviously, a bit different guy under the cowl. And maybe that would be his way of like finally like passing, literally passing the torch
right?
of Batman to someone else. And because like off the top of my head, I can't think. And again, I don't know Ben Affleck, but I can't think of many other comic book characters or comic book films that would attract Ben. I'm like, he loves
Right.
Batman. Batman is his guy. He's always been a fan of Batman. I think he said Batman was his favorite and whatnot. So again, and I know they talked about Superman as well. And I would not put it past him. Um, but if he ever got to do that Batman script, which we've heard from numerous sources that they're like, guys, that script is fantastic.
Right.
Just the people who worked on it and the people who have gotten to read it. I remember I always hoped for a leak. I was like, man, just hit the internet, just drop that script. But now I'm like, wait a minute. I'm kind of glad it didn't because if
Right.
there is a potential future in us still getting to see it, but with Ben in director's chair, I'll
Yeah.
take it. I'll take it.
Yeah. And if anyone's ever seen any of his movies, they're all dramas,
Yes.
with thriller aspects. I believe Gone Baby Gone, The Town, Argo.
Yes.
He won the studio an Oscar for that one, for directing
Hmm.
that. So he's he's done some quality work. So it'll definitely be interesting to see what he does. I am holding out hope that he's not gone.
Yeah.
He's not gone. For right now, all we know is Henry Cavill is gone. So
Hmm.
with all these things coming out, James Gunn put out a statement, and I'm going to share that statement now. Okay. Is that showing okay?
Yeah, absolutely on my
All
end.
right, cool. Thank you. One of the things Peter Safran, one of the things Peter and I were aware of when we took the job as the heads of DC Studios was a certain minority of people online that could be, well, uproarious and unkind, to say the least. Our choices for the DCU are based upon what we believe is the best for the story and best for the DC characters who have been around for the nearly 85 years. Perhaps these choices are great, perhaps not, but they are made with sincere hearts and integrity and always with the story in mind. No one loves to be harassed or called names, but to be frank, we've been through significantly worse. Disrespectful outcry will never, ever affect our actions. We were aware that there would be a period of turbulence when we took this gig, and we knew we would sometimes have to make difficult and not so obvious choices, especially in the wake of the fractious nature of what came before us. But this means little to us in comparison to our jobs as artists and custodians in helping to create a wide and wonderful future for DC. Okay. So I'm going to go first while I have this up. There's a few
All right.
things people had some reactions to this.
Absolutely.
And, in his, well, at this point, we already knew DC Studios was going to be the new name.
Yes.
And it's just that division of Warner Brothers, DC Studios. I think it went through a few over the years: DC Films, DC Entertainment.
Yeah.
It's been a few, but it's DC Studios. So we got that out of the way. But he said a certain minority of people online that could be, well, uproarious and unkind, to say the least. So obviously, he's talking about the people that are negative,
Yes.
but I can't help but think he used that word, the minority of people, also talking about the fans that are passionate about this.
Yes.
And I think that's kind of an unfair word to use. You're talking about the negative fans, but then you go on to talk about, reactions and how people react and such. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but the amount of people that retweeted released the Snyder Cut,
Hmm.
over the years, the amount of people that donated toward the Suicide Prevention Fund, the amount of money that was donated, the amount of people that voted for the Oscars fan moment
Hmm.
with the Flash that got it to win, you know, Ricardo, that doesn't sound like a minority of people to me.
Not at all. Not at all. And I understand if he's trying to say, look, there are very toxic people. There are toxic people in every fandom. Let's just get that out there, okay? And
Absolutely.
I never want to associate a fandom with toxicity because there's toxic in every single fandom out there. You have people that attach to these things, and sometimes they go overboard in the things that they say. We've seen it. We've seen a lot of toxicity towards DC, towards Zack Snyder, towards that family. You know what I mean? Towards these actors. So it comes from all areas on the internet. Um, and I think that if he was just saying like, listen, like there's some really bad things being said online, and that's the minority. That's one thing, but again, he's pretty much talking about the whole uproar in a way. It's like, oh, I understand the minority can be uproarious and whatnot. And when I heard that, it kind of it sent me back to when the chatter of the Snyder Cut started. And you would see things from the Hollywood Reporter talking about a cul-de-sac and talk about, oh, it's just a minority. Nobody really wants to see this. Nobody's really pushing for this film. It's just a minority. And it almost seems like a way to downplay something, to kind of just go, you know what? We're not worried about it because it's just a minority. And
Right.
I think that there's way more than a minority of people who were genuinely sad or heartbroken or upset about Henry Cavill not returning, because I've heard from numerous people who strongly dislike Man of Steel, who strongly dislike Batman v Superman, have all agreed that they had wished that Henry Cavill would remain as Superman, and they wanted to see him continue in a different direction, like the soft reboot we had mentioned.
Mhm.
So I don't think that it was ever a minority of people, because obviously that's where the most uproar happened, because everything else is kind of still in the air. Nothing has been confirmed. They haven't confirmed Gal leaving. They haven't confirmed Momoa dropping from Aquaman. They haven't confirmed anything with Ezra Miller. They've confirmed nothing. The only thing so far that we know that has been confirmed is that Henry Cavill would not return. And we saw how the internet reacted to that. And I would say again that it is much more than a minority. And I think the idea of throwing that word is to kind of say, hey, I mean, we hear it, but it's just a couple people. And I think it's way more than a couple people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, some people are saying that maybe he's going online too much
I've
and,
heard that. I've heard people say
and
James should get
responding.
off.
But I'll be honest with you, I appreciate the transparency.
Hmm.
I appreciate the transparency. I mean, I like what he says every time, but at least we're not in the dark. At least we're getting something and we're getting some information. And he's said that we'll know a little bit more come January, because he's
Hmm.
going to Warner Brothers Discovery with Peter Safran to, submit their plans, and it'll be a situation, seeing how long that's going to take, and what comes out next before that. Let's see here. So, in response to that large statement that he made, I believe it's in response to that, someone commented. Okay. And
Oh, yes.
yes. Who knows if it's true, but recasting all the main DCEU characters, DCU as we know now, but keeping some will be interesting. How Peacemaker and Suicide Squad characters slash actors live on, but the others don't, particularly when they have all interacted together. James Gunn replies, I keep seeing posts with this untrue story. We're not recasting everyone except the Suicide Squad. So
Ugh.
I'm going to leave that up, because with all this stuff happening, we don't believe that there's a full reboot at this point. We just
Mhm.
said, okay, well, there was no Superman. There's a chance no Batman. There's a chance no Gal Gadot. A lot of the talk online was, or are we looking at a full reboot? Are we looking at a partial reboot? And then some people started putting the pieces together and saying, well, what if he's just getting rid of everybody except for the people that he used in his projects, which
Mhm.
would include the Suicide Squad
Yep.
and the Peacemaker TV show, which also includes his wife, who played
Yes.
Harcourt.
Yes.
And it's obviously a big conflict of interest. And he responded to this as far as, you know, partial reboot, full reboot. Personally, losing Henry stinks.
Hmm.
Having said that, if he is the only actor we lose and we continue moving forward using most of everybody else, I'd be okay with that. If we had a partial reboot and everybody but James Gunn's people are left over,
Yeah.
that would make me feel a certain way.
I would be pretty heated. Now I am I might be on a completely different side, because when they recasted Henry Cavill, it hurt obviously. But it wasn't even so much about the recasting. It's we're going to a younger Superman.
Right.
So I was like, okay, so we have all these characters in the DCU, the DCEU, the DC Studios now, who in the past have interacted with Henry Cavill. How does one explain a recasting of Henry Cavill, but also going back in time to a much younger Superman? So when we're doing that, my reaction was, and I say this, I don't want anybody to not be able to work in these roles. I think that everyone is super grateful and happy to have
Right.
these roles. I think, look, John Cena as Peacemaker kills it. He does a great
Right.
job. Gal as Wonder Woman kills it. Ben Affleck as Batman. I don't want any of these people to lose these roles.
Right.
But when they said, "Hey, we're going with a younger Superman," I was like, "Oh, then you've got to reboot everybody. You pretty much have got to start from scratch at this point because so or am I led to believe, hey, we're gonna go with a much younger Superman. He's gonna be his second year in. He works at the Daily Planet, but all of the other characters that we've known and seen interact with Henry Cavill for years are just a part of this version now. Like
Right.
it took me out a little bit. So I was like, hey, you've got to reboot everybody.
Right.
But that might not be the case. It might be what you're saying. It might be very similar. Like, hey, like we might possibly just recast because again, James has made it a point to say that Superman might be their biggest priority right now because
Right.
it looks like he's doing what Zach was doing, where they started with Superman to build their universe. They're starting with that hero to
Right.
build out. So if we're gonna build out with a younger Superman, then that universe we're building out would has to feel fresh and new because now our lead is fresh and new. But like you said, if he ends up pretty much rebooting majority of the people outside of the people he chose, that is going to rub people in
Yeah.
the worst way. And
Yeah.
everyone, and look, I know James Gunn, I know James Gunn has an auto delete function,
Right.
so his tweets will be deleted. But I can guarantee you, people are taking screenshots, people are saving receipts, and say, "Hey, you said this and you said that," because that's the internet. That's what they do.
Right.
You said you wouldn't do this. You said you wouldn't do that. I personally, I think the entire league is being recasted.
Okay.
That's what I think he's going to do. I think they're going to recast the entire league. Obviously, there's gossip about Momoa, and we'll touch on that when that comes up.
Yeah.
I think he's going to recast the whole. I think in his mentality, he goes, "Hey, we can recast the whole league, and we can keep the smaller scale people because of the grand scheme of things. They weren't a major part of the universe. So he's like, you know, we can keep them, but we got to change our main core. But man, if he lets go of everybody and keeps, just those select few, that vocal minority online is going to be very loud that he speaks
Yeah.
about.
Absolutely. And I couldn't think of her name at the time. Jennifer Holland, that's his
Mm-hmm.
wife. She plays Harcourt, and Harcourt's a great character.
I like Harcourt quite a
Yeah.
bit.
Harcourt's a great character,
Yeah.
so it's it just it's just a bad look, I'm gonna fire
Mhm.
everybody but my wife.
Yeah.
you know, and
It
Margot
was like,
Robbie.
oh, yeah. And,
you know,
and Margot Robbie, my God. Okay, Margot
yeah,
Robbie is Harley Quinn. She's Harley
perfect,
Quinn, right? She's
perfect,
Harley Quinn.
absolutely,
So that was another thing I think James had mentioned in the past that he wanted to work with her again. That
right,
he loved working with her in the Suicide Squad and he wanted to work with her again. But again, seeing everything that I'm seeing, I'm like, I just got a bad feeling
mhm,
everybody's going. And honestly, I thought they had a pretty safe out with the multiverse. I really thought they were going to explore the multiverse to
right,
say, hey, we're just going to be exploring different
right.
universes.
So
You'll get
so
different interpretations.
right, so you're thinking maybe after the Flash, a new timeline where
Yeah.
some of the actors look different because
Hmm.
they wanted to go that route, and then that would explain why this new timeline doesn't match the old timeline, and we've seen that explored successfully through many projects.
Yeah, and
So
I was one of those people that said it wasn't going to happen when people said, "Oh, they might use the Flash to reboot the universe." I'm like, they're not going to do that. I was like, there's too much money to be made on keeping these actors. They're not going to do that. And then obviously everything changed, and
right,
there's a part of me that thinks, we've heard rumors that Henry Cavill's scene is being cut from Flash, and
right,
Gal Gadot is being cut from Flash, and is
right,
Ben's going to stay in Aquaman? So there's a lot of uncertainty, and I think that I think we're going to get a completely different timeline. I think Ezra Miller is going to be gone. I don't think
right.
I I hate to
Yes,
say it this way, but I think the people Zack Snyder brought on are getting
right.
recasted.
Sax
That's what I think.
actors. Yes.
Yes.
Right, right. So, are you thinking that he does have a full reboot in mind? Full reboot,
Yeah.
No one, including his people, or I mean, do you think he might keep some of his people? You know, or you don't know yet?
I don't know yet because
Okay,
I want to take him at his word. I don't want to
right.
sit here and say he's lying to us. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. Now,
Absolutely.
again, you can find times where he's like, I would never touch Superman, but now he's doing a
No,
Superman
he's doing
script.
it. Yeah.
So it's like if things change. It doesn't mean he lies, but people can change their minds.
Change your mind.
So
Yep.
I honest right now, I think he reboots majority of the people, but he keeps his Suicide Squad.
Right.
Um, and yeah, his Suicide Squad. I think the Peacemaker series continues. Um, and who else? That Yeah,
So,
that might be it.
so they would be a part of the Noom timeline where they didn't change, but everybody else did, or
Yeah,
most of them didn't change,
yeah,
So,
yeah.
all right, that's fair. That's fair.
That's what I'm thinking. Just because I mean, the universe can be whatever he wants it to be at this point,
Oh, absolutely.
and the interesting thing about, and we talked about this, Peacemaker from the Suicide Squad movie to Peacemaker in the series feels like a reboot of the character.
Absolutely.
It felt like that was a reboot in itself. So if James wanted to continue with that version of his Peacemaker, he could find a way to do it. Um, and I think it just might be like, hey, comic book fans aren't dumb; they'll just accept it. It's just a
Right.
matter of whether they're going to accept it, in a joyous way or just be kind of bummed about it.
So we ended up getting another breadcrumb. I can't say breadcrumb anymore because we're just getting full on meals at this point.
Yep, they just every day it's like here's something brand new, and it's like okay.
Yeah. So we got something else.
Uh,
And I'm not going to read this long statement that Dwayne Johnson made, but the gist of it is that, well, I'll read the first part. My passionate friends, I wanted to give you a long awaited Black Adam update regarding the character's future in the new DC universe. James Gunn and I connected, and Black Adam will not be in their first chapter of
mhm.
storytelling. However, DC and $7, his production company, Dwayne Johnson's, have agreed to continue exploring the most valuable ways Black Adam can be utilized in future DC multiverse chapters. There's that word.
Mhm.
James and I have known each other for years and have always rooted for each other to succeed. It's no different now, and I always root for you, DC and Marvel, to win and win big. And I'll stop there. He goes on to talk about, the 15 years he spent getting Black Adam to come to the screen and eventually it happening, and the superhero genre. James Gunn responds, love The Rock, and I'm always excited to see what he and $7 do next. Can't wait to collaborate soon. So, well, let's recap. Now we're looking at him saying, all right, Henry will not be a part of things. We are hoping to work with him again in the future.
Mhm.
He said, Gal Gadot, that's just not true. As far as that goes, where'd you get that idea that I booted Gal? So he didn't confirm whether or not she was gone. He just said that's not true. He said we've talked about Ben Affleck coming back to direct, and now he's addressed somebody else now. Uh, Dwayne Johnson says Black Adam will not be a part of their first chapter, and Gunn is saying, can't wait to collaborate. So what does that mean? Like, okay, so
Oh man.
you're telling me all these people, are we telling them we want them to still be a part of the studio, but just not as the characters they're playing, or are are, are you going to be a part of our new rebooted universe down the line, years down the line, though? He's
Mhm.
got a 4-year plan. I'm not saying next year or the year after, like after he's established his new timeline, are they going to be a part of things down the line? Like, there's a lot to unpack there after the
A
past
lot.
week of discussing, well, they're not gone all the way. Is he being just polite that we hope to see them again one day in these roles and different roles? What are your feelings on that?
This one for me, I went through a couple different feelings when I first read it. I kind of just like tennis balls bouncing off a wall.
Right.
So one of the first things that stood up to me was when he used the term multiverse. And when he used that term, I said, "Oh, maybe they're open to the idea of allowing Rock to essentially do what Matt Reeves is doing and what Todd Phillips is doing, where it says, hey, you don't necessarily fit in our first chapter, but we'll keep talking and we'll discuss ideas, and maybe there's room in our multiverse aspect. Maybe Rock will be able to kind of have his own you know part of the universe elsewhere, I should say. But as I sat there, and maybe I was just being pessimistic, this felt like a professional goodbye. It felt
Mm,
like after 15 years, Rock had put in all this work, and while it doesn't fit now, they're open to discussion. But again, we're talking about a 4-year plan, or are we talking about like potentially not having Black Adam even in the conversation 4 years out from now? The man has already waited 15 years to make this movie, and he dealt with a lot of setbacks, and again, fighting for Henry that we talked about. Obviously, there's a lot of reports online. The studio is saying one thing about The Rock, and then other people are saying this about The Rock, and it's like, does he want to still be surrounded by that type of energy and controversy? So when I read it a few more times, because I read it a few times, I was like, man, this sounds like they're just being courteous to one another and professional. And
right.
it almost sounds like, hey, like we'll discuss it and we'll have conversations. But if I was a betting man, if I had to put money on the table right now, I'm like, based on what we've been hearing just through rumors and gossip, I'm like, I don't think Rock returns as Black Adam, um, if at all, for a very, very long time. I don't know. It just seems like they both sounded very professional, right? It's like, hey, we love The Rock. I can't wait to see what they do next. And he's like, yeah, I've always rooted for James. It sounded like two guys that were like, hey, we're going to be professional about this.
Right.
Because, I mean, obviously, let's be real. Warner Brothers, the DCU, over the past week or so, it's just been negative. It's just been negative. Reactions
Right.
have just been negative. So they took it amongst themselves and said, hey, listen, we're not going to. Could you imagine if the post was, hey, Black Adam will not be returning? The reaction would have been
Right.
like, oh, we're just canning everybody. So he's like, you
Right.
know what? And so again, I might be pessimistic here, but my internal belief is that that's the end.
Right. Right. All right. And that kind of leads me into this last screenshot that I had to share here, because we keep talking about this new timeline and the multiverse, and somebody asks him, are you open to producing any Elseworlds DC projects that aren't set in the DCU? That's the
Hmm.
main timeline. And he said that is actively happening. So this lets us know a couple of things. There is still going to be a DCU timeline. We
Yes.
don't know what that DCU timeline will look like. It will look like either a combination of what we've seen since 2013 up until
Hmm.
now and James Gunn's DCU, or it will look brand spanking new, completely
Hmm.
new.
Yep.
And regardless of what that timeline looks like, he's saying that there's going to be Elseworlds where it's going to be, stories that have nothing to do with the main timeline. Some people argue that maybe Joker could be considered an Elseworld story. The
Yeah.
thing, Todd Phillips and Joaquin Phoenix, that's an Elseworld story.
Hmm.
Some people can argue that because we have a DCU timeline, that Matt Reeves, the Batman universe, could be considered Elseworlds. There was some discussions about making that Earth 2,
Yeah.
and they wanted to have their own set of heroes. That would have been really counterproductive. I thought the idea
Yeah.
was cool, but now we have like 3 or 4 Batman running around, 3 or 4 Superman, like
Yep.
it would be a lot to juggle at that point. So in any case, so this is where we're at now.
Hmm.
We haven't even established what the timeline will be, but now we're talking about Elseworlds projects.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of different directions that can go in. We've seen him. Oh, those are the juicy stuff here.
Yeah.
He's shared screenshots of Lobo. He
Hmm.
shared a screenshot of Dead Man, Mr. Terrific,
Yup.
and he even shared something, Kingdom Come.
Kingdom Come.
He shared that. So he's got a lot of ideas. I don't know if
Hmm.
he wants to make movies out of these guys, but how do you feel about this information here as far as the Elseworlds thing goes?
The Elseworld thing is interesting because I couldn't tell if he was being sneaky, and what I mean by that is they said, "Hey, are you open to the idea of producing Elseworld stories outside of the DCU timeline?" And he's like, "That is actively happening."
Right.
That's true. That's factual. That is indeed at the moment actively happening. Like you said, many would argue that's what the Batman is. Many would argue that's what Joker is. Now, I don't know if his answer is telling us this will continue to happen because he was very short. It's like that is actively happening. And I'm like,
Right.
does that mean you're looking into projects in the future to continue? Because I think everyone was very surprised on how Joker did, being a R-rated film, being its own thing,
Right.
and making over $1 billion. I'll be honest with you, I never
Oscars.
thought. We're talking Oscar, we're talking prestigious award season
Right.
and nominations and wins, and I think that got the wheels turning because if you, I'm sure you remember, to our knowledge, Warner Brothers wasn't interested in making that Joker movie. They weren't interested, and they kind of lowballed Todd Phillips with how much money they were going to give him, and they did really really well. And so I think that kind of opened up the idea of like, oh, maybe we can make more Elseworld stories like this.
Right.
And you had Matt Reeves, the Batman, and I'm sure you remember this too. They had behind the scenes photos of a Halloween party that had someone dressed as Superman and someone dressed as Wonder Woman, and that was cut from the film. And I think that was originally going to be in the movie, to go back to what you were saying, that they were going to consider an Earth 2. They would
Right.
have their own superheroes. And I think that party was going to acknowledge, yes, those heroes exist in this universe too, but they cut it. And I think
Right.
Matt wants to stay as far away as possible from connective tissue to a major universe. I think he just wants to focus here. So I don't know if when the Batman is completed and with Joker 2 is completed, if we're still going to be getting those Elseworld stories. I'd be down for it. I love them. I miss the standalone comic book films tremendously, which is probably one of my favorite things about the Batman. I don't think the Batman is a perfect movie in any sense, but one of my favorite aspects about the Batman is that it's a standalone.
It's
It
his own
feels like
thing.
his own thing. Joker, it's its own
Its own
thing. And even
thing.
people tried really hard to connect the Batman and Joker. They
Yeah.
were like,
Yeah.
"Oh, maybe that's Robert Pattinson." I was like, "No, just they're completely different."
Yep.
So I like that idea. I would love to explore a Lex Luthor. Give me that. Give me a Freeze. Give me that. Like I'm open to that. I just don't know if James is saying that they're going to continue that, or if that's just something. Yeah, that's currently happening right now. You asked a
Right.
question of something, and we're doing that.
Because
I don't know if that's the plan going forward.
right.
Um,
Right. Because you mean to tell me you're not only establishing your timeline, but you're establishing alternate universe timelines at the same time? Like, how much do you have planned for these 4 years? You know?
yeah, because as well received as the Batman was, and as well received as Joker was,
Right.
there were still fans that were upset because they're like, well, what's connected? Is nothing connected? Like,
Right.
so I'm like, does James still want to do that? Does he still want to say, hey, we've got multiple timelines and multiple this? But Saslav, oh God, I pronounced his name wrong. I apologize. Um, he mentioned, he was like, I don't want to have three Batman. I don't
Right.
want to have. So I'm like, oh, so I thought the Matt Reeves verse was dead. I was like, oh, they're killing it. They're gonna give it to Boot. Like they don't want to have more than one Batman.
Right.
And James Gunn had mentioned that there will be a Batman in his DCU. So I'm like, does Matt just get one more movie and they call it a day? I don't know. So again, with that particular tweet, I don't know if he's saying we're going to continue, but merely, hey, we're actively doing that right now. So see.
I think there is a strong chance that uh, the Joker sequel
Mhm.
will be it.
Yes,
I think that we won't see that again. After
I
that,
don't either.
then we've made $1 billion, and I don't know
Mhm.
what would entice Todd Phillips and Joaquin Phoenix to come back, but the studio found a way,
Yep.
and they're doing it. So shout out to Lady Gaga. She's getting to play
Yeah.
Harley
Yeah.
Quinn in the role of a lifetime,
Yep.
for her, and that's cool. But I think that'll be it if
Hmm.
this is what they want to do, because they talked about they want to have a cohesive vision and a cohesive universe.
Yeah.
That does not mean side stories. That does not mean that we're going to continue doing this. So I think that Joker 2 might be it.
Mhm.
I'm going to drop a bombshell here. the the Batman, the Reevesverse, as we like to call it, they have a show with Colin Farrell's The Penguin plan,
Yep.
and they have other projects planned. I think there was a Gotham City PD. There was a
Hmm.
Arkham Asylum. There's a lot of different projects planned. There's the Batman 2, which hasn't even been greenlit yet.
Nope.
I think there's a chance that the Reevesverse is done, that we're not going to see any of it. I think the Batman will end up being one movie. If
It's
if he moves forward with this quote unquote full, if we do a full reboot,
mhm.
because if he wants to bring eyes to his product and his and Saffron's I'm going to say his because he's the face,
Yeah.
with Gunn's DCU, and the reason that makes me think that is because we don't know if it's true or not, but there's a report that, the studio wants Pattinson's Batman to be the Batman for the DCU
Mhm.
in the new timeline. And we know Matt Reeves isn't going to want to do that.
No,
We
he
know
doesn't want that.
Pattinson may not want to do that because he won't get to work with Reeves.
Hmm.
And I just, I don't know how contracts work. Maybe Pattinson is contract and he'll have to do it. I don't know. But if that's the case, at the end of the day, I think the Batman universe might be done, and well, it'll be done as far as Matt Reeves being involved, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
because we can't have Pattinson's Batman in this new timeline. And then Matt Reeves gets to continue doing his thing, on the side, or, they might want to continue having him in team up movies. I mean, maybe he gets to, maybe not. I don't know. I just, I just don't see Matt Reeves being down for it. I don't see Robert Pattinson being down for it. I think there's a strong chance the Reevesverse is done
Yeah. I think
if
that
if they want to do that full reboot.
we're also looking at a time crunch, right? Because the Batman 2, as far as I know, hasn't been officially greenlit.
No,
As far as I know, there is no script, and we are heading into 2023.
right.
So you would have to get a script, you have pre-production.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking the absolute earliest you see this movie is potentially the end of 2025. Now, is James Gunn, who's currently working on the Superman of the new DCU, planning to release that Superman movie very close to a Batman movie that doesn't connect to his DCU?
Right.
I think that when they brought James in, one of the biggest aspects of bringing James in was he was part of a universe that was very connected. And I think that Warner Brothers craved that connective tissue.
Right.
So I can't see them continuing and saying, you know what? We've got the connective tissue. James has got this board of this movie connects to this movie connects to this movie. But in the middle of that, we have Matt Reeves, the Batman 2. And again, I'm not saying I don't want that movie to happen.
Right.
I'm more on the train that I think James is also going to let that universe go, as it just won't fit. It just won't
Right.
fit his connective tissue DCU. Because you go back to the same problem that many fans speculated and talked about, was that nothing feels connected. So
Right.
again, if he's working on the Superman script now, we might see that 2025. You're talking about, you have, this is the first movie to start a universe, but hey, don't forget we've got this other one all the way over here. Like,
Right.
I don't
And
know.
also, there was a lot of just, and we come back to this often, and we're going to keep coming back to this often. This is a business,
Yes.
and they need to make money, and they've been losing money on these projects that they keep putting
Hmm.
out. So what would they rather do? Pour more money into the new DCU,
Hmm.
or split what they're putting into the DCU with these side stories,
Yeah.
whether it be the Batman, something Black Label, like Joker,
Hmm.
or this Elseworlds thing that he just brought up, no, they want to market themselves
Yeah.
so people will come see it. And these side stories, I hate to rain on the parade, man, because I love Joker. Joker was an
Yeah.
amazing movie. I'm a big Batman. Batman's my favorite superhero. And just
Mhm.
to see Joker explored like that and had nothing to do with anything else, it was awesome. And the Batman, and we'll have a discussion one day about Batman and Batman movies and such.
Mhm.
While, like you, I didn't feel like it was perfect. Thought it was solid.
Yeah.
I thought it was solid. I enjoyed it. And it was possibly the most screen accurate Batman movie I've seen compared to comic books. It felt like I
Yeah.
was reading a comic book
Yeah.
when I saw the movie. And there was a lot of things I would change about that movie. But as far as the presentation, I enjoyed it. And it would be sad to see that quote unquote universe go. I just don't see it happening, with
It,
what they're trying to do.
it's what it doesn't fit in my opinion.
Right.
People might ask me, well, how do you say it doesn't fit? You have no idea what James is building with his universe. I'm like, because Matt has already developed his. Like again, we call it the ReevesVerse.
Right.
Matt is already as grounded as it can be. And we know James is going to shoot for the fences. Again, he talked about Lobo. You know what I mean? Lobo isn't a household name. A lot of people don't know anything about Lobo. Like James wants to introduce these characters, Mr. Terrific, Lobo. He
Mm-hmm.
wants to start with Superman. And I don't think it's out of the question. There might be, a deal that they might want to work with Rob and say, hey, Mr. Pattinson, like if you want to stay on board, we'd like to take you in this direction, but like there's a big possibility that's not going to involve Matt Reeves. And from all the interviews that I've watched, it seemed to me that they had something very similar to what Bale and Nolan had, where it's like, I want to make these movies, but I only want to make them with these directors.
Correct.
And I feel that that's the feeling I got whenever Robert Pattinson spoke about the movie and the role. So I don't know. I just
Right.
James could offer it, but is Robert going to take it? Like you said, does contracts come into play? Was he contracted for 3 films? And we've seen Warner Brothers do this. I don't know if Robert was contracted for 3 films right away because, as far as I know, none of those heroes were contracted for more than one movie. It wasn't until after the first movie came out, and then they were like, let's see how it goes. And then
Right.
they had those negotiations. So I'm not too sure Robert has a contract in place. Again, what do I know? I'm
Right.
just making assumptions based off what we've seen. But it is you're dropping a bombshell, but I think it's entirely possible that we never get a Batman 2.
Right. Yeah, it might happen. And you just mentioned Lobo. We didn't touch on that yet. The speculation is that we won't see, once again, an actor change. We're not going
Mm-hmm.
to completely get rid of him, Jason Momoa. In the new DCU, he's going to possibly be Lobo. This hasn't been
Yeah.
confirmed or denied right now, but Jason was posting some things and saying, I wish I could
Mm-hmm.
say, I can't say what we want to do. People are saying, well, maybe he produces it. I don't know, and then this is a situation where James Gunn used him in Peacemaker when the Justice League
Yeah.
made a cameo.
Yup.
So obviously that's not going to work. We can't have an actor playing two different roles in the same universe. That's going to be confusing.
Nope.
That's going to be weird.
Nope.
It's going to be weird. So I feel like he's offering consolation prizes
Yeah.
for
Like
people.
we know that Jason and Ezra were the only 2 members from the lead to go shoot the Peacemaker series finale.
Correct.
They were the only two to actually be there. And
Right.
from what
We,
we've
we had
read online,
silhouette Superman and silhouette
ah,
Wonder Woman.
yep. And I don't even think
Yeah.
Cyborg was there. I don't even think they even had a silhouette of Cyborg. I could be wrong. Someone's gonna have to fact check me on
No,
that one.
no Cyborg, and I think no Batman either, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, I don't think there was. Yeah, you're right. I don't think there was a Batman. And I think James had mentioned because he was like, "Oh, we don't know who Batman is at this point," and I was like, "Oh my god!" But he had mentioned that they were so on board. And again, if it seems like James might be keeping the people that he has worked with or the people that he's got a connection with, and we'll see as days go on who stays and who goes. But obviously, the biggest rumor with Momoa is that Aquaman 2 would be the last time we see him as Aquaman,
Right.
and we would be having him go to Lobo again. not confirmed or denied. We've seen some interviews here and there where Jason's like, oh, he shared what? James shared what online? And they're like, Lobo, go, okay. And he's trying not to say anything. So, I mean, when you look at Lobo, look on paper, when you look at Lobo, it's hard not to see Jason Momoa and look at Lobo and look at Jason and go, wow, that's pretty spot on. Attitude wise, presentation. It's easy to see why James would be saying, hey, come on. And it's no secret that Lobo is Momoa's favorite comic book character. He's
Right.
got tons and tons of comics of Lobo. So, like you said, you can't have him play a different character in the same universe, which leads me back to I'm like, man, they're just gonna reboot the whole thing and they may use Flash to do it.
Right.
Or they just don't even care enough. They might say, you know what, just get the Flash movie out, and when we reboot it, no one ask any questions. Just call it DCU, DC Studios. It's just James Gunn's universe. Enjoy. We might not get closure in that sense of like, hey, he made a new timeline. It might just end and go, all right, well, that's the end of that.
Right. And you bring up a good point as far as that goes. Let me see if I could find this here. Wish I had it in front of me. I don't have the exact
Which one is it?
it's the dates of all the DC movies.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Um,
That are coming out in 2023.
yeah, next year.
There's four of them. We got
There
four
is.
DC movies coming out next year.
So
You've got Shazam: Fury of the Gods.
yeah,
You've got Aquaman 2.
right,
You have Blue Beetle,
right.
and what is the fourth? I'm drawing a blank.
Oh, the Flash.
The Flash.
Yeah, so
That easy, I
it's and
forgot.
I
The
think in the
Flash.
order it's going to be Shazam 2, Flash, then Blue Beetle, then Aquaman. I don't know the exact order, but that's the four
Oh yeah, yeah,
movies.
yeah.
You know, Aquaman's going to close out the year. It's a Christmas movie, so Christmas time movie that it's coming out. Um, so that's the other thing. Like, all right, so if he announces a full reboot, then what's the point of all this coming out?
It
You
was.
know,
It was.
because you're going to release these movies, and business wise, they make a ton of money. And then what does the movie industry do? Once they make a ton of money, if there's room for a sequel, well, we'll put out a sequel. We'll put out a universe, a connective universe movie to keep building on that.
Mhm.
But you're telling the fans it doesn't matter if you come or not. This will be the last time you see everybody. So when that we're looking at like a year-long farewell tour
Yeah,
to
and
everybody.
it's wild because Aquaman, I'll be very honest with you, I did not imagine Aquaman making over $1 billion.
Oh
That was
yeah,
not something that I envisioned, and it's nothing against the character. I love the character. It was just I didn't see people run into the theaters because Aquaman was the first movie to come out following the theatrical release of Justice League, and that did not do well. And you had the controversy, and there was just so much negativity around DC. And I'm like, man, you guys kind of sent Aquaman up to fail because he's got to follow all that turmoil and this and this and this and that. And he came out, he made $1 billion. So
right,
what do? You greenlight a sequel, and that's what you do. So now you've got a potential Aquaman 2 coming out that possibly could have made just as much money. More or less, we'll never truly know what it could have made if this news never came out. Because now you're saying, yeah, like you love Momoa's Aquaman, but essentially whatever they're building in the sequel, you're not getting a follow up. You know, whatever they're potentially building in Blue Beetle or in Shazam: Fury of the Gods. I remember there being a rumor that Gal might appear in that movie.
right.
You know, like, and I know, and I've heard people also say like, oh, you don't need movies to lead into anything to enjoy them, and I'm like, that's fair, that is accurate.
Yes,
You don't need movies to lead, but these movies were built on the idea of leading to something. You know, it's why I said I miss standalone films because you don't need them to lead to anything. But all these movies were supposedly leading towards something. And then the orders got moved around. So you've
right.
had reshoots. So it's very, very, very confusing. So it almost, I think that it hurt, the announcements hurt all those films coming out because you kind of go watch it, and no matter how much fun you're having and going, oh man, I hope they make more, you're hit with the realization that that's not a possibility if we're rebooting this universe.
Right. Right. Writing on the wall with everything we've discussed.
Mhm.
When James Gunn presents this plan, it could be in January, it could be all the way, it could be breadcrumbs, and then we get something by Comic-Con in July. I doubt they're going to wait till San Diego Comic-Con. They need to let people know
Yeah.
ahead of time. Or, I mean, we just touched on it. Maybe they don't say anything at all because they want people to go see these movies, and
Yeah.
then after the fact let people know they're going to do some type of reboot.
Mhm.
But based upon what Gunn said and what we're hearing, with these actors getting offered either different roles, different positions, speculation, what do you think is going to happen when James Gunn presents this plan? What do you think? What do you think that plan might look like, assuming we get an announcement in January or close?
I think I think James is in a bad position right now. Because right now you have people that are upset, and a lot of times when people are upset, they want to hang on to that feeling. They want to sometimes they just want to be upset because they're like, "Oh,
Right.
you did us dirty. I can't let go of this feeling." And again, I'm also in that boat. It's hard for me to not be upset when I think about these things. It's hard for me to sit here and go, "Well, I'm very optimistic about it. I'm trying my best." But I'm human, and at times I'm like, I'm not even like. There are days where I'm like, I'm not looking forward to any of these movies anymore because they kind of got knocked out of me. And then there's
Right.
other days it's like, no, I want to see Blue Beetle. I want to support Blue Beetle. I want to go see that movie. I want to support Momoa. Like I want to go do that. I want to do those things. But obviously, the Superman is his first movie that he's talking about. I think if anything, he's gonna want to give the people something that they could be very excited about.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he's gonna essentially do a Thanos reveal in terms of like, hey, this is what we're building towards. You see this right here?
Right. Right.
I don't think he's going to give us anything big
No.
like that. I don't think he's going to say, hey, like Kingdom Come, we're getting there. I don't think he's going to do that. I think essentially they might start. It's weird, but I think they might start smaller than people are thinking. I don't think he's
Mm.
going to release like a 5 film slate. I don't think that's going to be the case because again,
Mm.
as far as I know, he signed for 4 years, and the last
Yes.
thing Warner Brothers wants to do is to release a slate because they've done this numerous times. Is
Oh
release a
yeah.
slate of movies that never end up happening.
Right.
So I think if anything, we might see 3 pictures. We might get like, hey, these are our first 3 films we're going to be working on over the next few years, and then they're going to go by that. I think Superman will be one. Um, I think Batman is going to be another one.
Right.
I think they're gonna start with Superman and Batman. I don't think it's gonna be Robert Pattinson. I would love for it to be the Trinity. I'd love for there to be a
Oh
Superman,
yeah.
Batman, a Wonder Woman. I would love for those 3 to kick off your universe.
Right.
But again, he's been showing us a lot of interesting characters. Like who knows? Maybe he'll go crazy and be like, give us Justice League Dark. Let's get Constantine. Let's get Swamp Thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like he might want to do something crazy like that. Guillermo del Toro was once attached to something like that. If they could pull that, I tell you right now that they got my money. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like so. I think in January, I do think they're going to release some things. I don't think it's going to be as big as people think. That's my takeaway. I don't think we're going to get a drop of 8 films, 9 films. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think we're going to get maybe a solid 3 films to start. I
Right.
think of like, hey, here's your 3 movies that are going to be over the next 2 to 3 years, and we're going to go from here. If James is a madman, he drops this is where we're going. I don't think he's going to do that, but
Right.
if he's like crazy enough, because again, 4 years is not a long time. You know what I mean? To
Right.
sign on like 4 years, you're talking about multiple scripts, pre-production, casting, post-production. So in 4 years, you can't drop and say like, "Hey, we're going to drop 16 films in 4 years." You just can't do it. So for me, I think that we might get a smaller slate than people are expecting, and I think that um, he's going to have to swing very hard for people to be optimistic because right now everybody's just in a foul mood.
Yeah, and you talk about dates and such. So I just looked it up. The Joker sequel is going to come out in late 2024.
Okay.
So I think I saw October 2024 for now.
Mhm.
I don't want to rush things, but
Mhm.
I feel like at least one James Gunn DCU movie has to come out by the end of 2024.
That's what I was thinking as well.
So that means plan established January, writing, et cetera, and they need to start filming soon if it's a smaller scale movie,
Mhm.
because it's going to take the filming. That doesn't take as long. It's the editing and post that takes a
Mhm.
really long time. And I don't know when it would have to be released, but maybe sometime. You don't want it to compete with Joker, so maybe Christmas you know, of 2024, maybe summer 2024, if they can get
Hmm.
everything done,
Yeah.
because 2023, they have all of 2023, and then the first half of 2024, that's a year and a half. I
Yeah.
think that's viable, but I think at least one movie and then amp it up from there, because you can't have, I mean, you can, but it wouldn't be a good look to have zero DCU movies that you have this man coming in and telling you I have a plan and such, but you have to wait 2 years to see the first thing.
Yeah.
So I think it's
Yeah.
it's possible, and who knows? We might get other stuff in the meantime. We
Yeah.
might.
I, I think, I think it's possible, and I think the first movie will be Superman. If he's already been writing the script
Probably, yeah,
for months, he said months already. I wouldn't be surprised if James already has an idea of who he wants. I
that's
wouldn't be
true too.
surprised if, again, if he's been writing, like we've known of writers and directors who have written scripts with actors in mind. We've known that to be the case.
Right.
I would not be surprised if James already has an idea. So the Superman film might already have certain wheels turning that we're not aware of, So if, like you said, I think one by late 2024 is reasonable if he's
Right.
already like, yeah, we're filming in 2023. First 6 months of 2023, we're filming, and now
Right.
we've got the whole rest of 2023 and 2024. It's possible. But like you said, you can't bring this guy in with this much hype and this much energy online and say, yeah, but you're not getting anything for years.
Right.
It's just hard
I
for me
mean,
to think
spring
that.
2025, but that just feels so long away.
It's
It's
so far.
for just one movie.
Yeah,
I mean, and I read that they're not trying to go big budget because of the
I know.
risk.
Yeah,
After releasing the movie, and then you pay for distribution and marketing and such, it just balloons. So
yeah.
they might want to go lower budget, and he's lower budget is, excuse me, in his wheelhouse.
Hmm.
And and he's got big budget, but lower budget. He has a lower budget background, and maybe that could work, and then we could see a movie by the end of 2024, hopefully. Um, oh man, there is a lot to look forward to as far as things go. I I'm holding out hope that it's just a soft reboot.
I'm so pessimistic right now. I'm
I
sorry.
know. I'm holding out hope that there's a soft reboot. I mean, with the writing on the wall, obviously no Henry. There's still a chance Ben Affleck Batman in some capacity. He actively said, "Where'd you get that idea about Gal being booted?" So maybe we'll see her again. Maybe we'll see her again. I really don't want to see Harley go. I don't want to see Margot Robbie as Harley go. He loves her. He stated
Yeah,
it. He had so much fun working with her. And I mean, in that new universe, she could not be a part of anything.
yeah.
She could have her own thing. And maybe we finally get that elusive Gotham City Sirens movie.
Yeah. She's
you
mentioned
know,
she wants to do stuff with Poison Ivy. Like she
yep,
wants it. She
Ivy,
absolutely does.
Catwoman. And,
Hmm.
I just, a full reboot would make me really sad, because a lot of these people, it would be sad to see them go. But
Yeah.
we'll see what happens. But then, all right, we're gonna do full reboot, but Matt Reeves still gets to do his little thing over
Yeah.
here, and
It's
Todd Phillips still gets to do his little thing over here, and we're not even
the
talking about the TV shows, like,
and
and
that's
they're
why
their
it's
own
so weird.
universes in itself too, you
Yeah,
know?
that's why it's so weird, is because you have saying, "Hey, we're doing this, but then we're also doing this,"
Yeah,
and it's like, when I think of all this stuff happening, I think of that line from BVS, "20 years in Gotham, Alfred. We've seen what promises are worth."
right,
Like it's a very pessimistic point of view, but I'm at that point where it's like, ah, man, like you could say one thing now and change your mind later.
right.
That's the nature of the biz. So I think. I A soft reboot would have totally worked, and that's why I was kind of taken when they were like, "Hey, we're recasting Henry," and I was like, "Why?" He goes, "Oh, we're gonna do, a different version of this character, but he'll already know who Batman, who know Wonder Woman. I'm like, oh, well then you can just keep Henry. And he's like, no, he's got to be younger. So I'm like,
Right. He's
oh
gotta be
man,
different.
we're just rebooting this whole thing. So
Right. Right. I mean, it could be a situation where it's a new universe and
mhm.
they're just going to treat him just the same, but he
Yeah,
has a different face because it's a new timeline.
yeah,
It could
yeah,
be that.
yeah,
We've seen that. People have different
yeah.
faces and nobody does anything because it's a new
No,
timeline. Because in this timeline, that's what that person looks like,
yeah, they just
So
take it. They just take it. And I'm like, oh, so I was like, okay, so if Superman is younger, so we're getting a younger Batman, right? Because or do you want to have a much bigger age gap between that
right,
Batman and Superman? I was like, do you want that?
right,
I don't know what he wants.
right. All right. Well, I think we've gone into things enough for today. So we're gonna move on here. But I did want to thank everybody for watching, for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed listening to us or watching us speak on YouTube here. We're gonna get better with doing that because we want to get those followers up, those subscriptions up. We want to continue putting out content for you. Please check us out. Let your friends know. Also, we want to let you know it's not always going to be like this. There's just a lot going on with the DCU, so we had to get into that, and we'll get into it again. Obviously, we will,
Yeah,
but we're working
yeah.
on content and some more things for you guys. So, Brother Ricardo, anything else you'd like
Yeah.
to add before we get out of here?
I will say, please feel free to comment in the comment section. How do you feel about certain things that are happening on the topics that we're talking about?
All right.
Because we absolutely will read them, we will respond, and I just like to hear a dialogue from other people too, and we both do. You know what I mean? That's why we use social media the way that we do. We want to be able to hear people's thoughts and things like that. And there might be some things that we said in this video today where you guys might completely disagree, and I want to see
Yeah.
that. I want you guys to comment
Yeah.
below. I'm like, well, I think we should be more optimistic and hopeful, and I think this is a great thing. I think James is the best guy for the job. I want
Right.
to see that. You know what I mean? Like, I want to see that. I want to see people. And if you agree, I'd love to see that too. So get comfortable with that comment section, because we'll read it, we will respond, and it's a great way for you guys to open a dialogue amongst yourselves as well. So feel free, comment away.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Friends, thank you so much. We will see you soon, and thank you for coming to the panel.
See you later.